So here is the second half of the video. I'm Linda of Christ is King Forever. This is part 2 of Dr. Peterson in A Lion's Den. This is actually the real name and title of the video that you can find online. Everybody's talking about it. I just like to say he did a very good job. I felt very well represented by a man who doesn't claim to be a Christian. So I think he did very well. He brought reason and logic, which is interesting because what's logical to one person isn't so logical to others, and I found this out by watching this video. One of the first questions I was asked by a man who basically says, is there morality outside of God? Meaning, do you need God in order to have morality? And yes, you do need God to have morality, because it's like being in a courtroom and expecting a verdict, expecting there to be law and a standard that comes with being in a courtroom. There's an order of the court in itself, the way that it is able to communicate between the attorneys and the judge, but there's also a built-in verdict that happens eventually, and it can't happen if the members of the courtroom are not there, including the judge. And how I know this is absolutely true is because morality implies perfect oversight. So it means that you have a type of perfection and a moral line and a standard that has to be met. Otherwise, the word loses all of its definition and meaning. It's almost impossible to have justice if there's not law, order, and a plumb line that's objectively measuring all the things therein. You will find the best way to do this is to answer to something else. That's why you have two different opposing attorneys standing before somebody who has been a good attorney in the past, who has a lot of knowledge about law, who has had years of experience. The wisest of the attorneys are usually kind of chosen to be there to judge what the attorneys are doing, and to say, hey, you're doing that out of order. Hey, you're doing this. You're viewing the law incorrectly. So that's why it makes sense that just like a courtroom works, this is how it works for Christians. We're always moving our focus, attention, and our dedication and inspiration toward moving closer and closer to the truth. And this is a type of sacrifice, this type of objectivity that we keep trying to find our alignment in, morally finding our alignment in, is how we dedicate ourselves to God. And anytime somebody is saying, I'm willingly sacrificing and laying down my own truth for that objective truth, you're going to find something closer to what works and is healthiest for society as a whole. So it is the absolute objective truth. That's how you maintain morality, is getting up and doing the things you don't want to do every day. It's knowing that you have to answer to something else, because as soon as you stop answering to something else, that morality and the definition of being moral goes down the drain. That's why it's really important to have an objective observer looking at you and saying, I don't know if you know this, but that deception that you have, that love, that craving, that's from a place of deceit. You're deceiving yourself. And it reveals blind spots. Even when it tells me my blind spots, I don't see it, which is, I mean, that's pretty blind. It happens to everybody. The next question is, what is the purpose of life? And it is to find your eternal identity and place, title, position, occupation that's only found in Christ, and to see your true reflection of how he views you in looking and seeing his face. And it's through Jesus that we see his face. But it's only after you've learned how to be self-sacrificial. All the things that end up on your gravestone are sacrifices. When one becomes a mom, usually they've sacrificed a few things. They've shed blood, they've shed tears, they've mourned, they've cheered. All the things that most people are remembered for are things that are sacrificial. And Jesus tells you how to do that. He shows through demonstrating his life being put on a cross and leaving way too early when he was made to live forever. We rejected the peace and the love that he had to offer, because there was a judgment that came along with him that nobody liked. An already made assumption of what Peterson was going to say, and he says something like, oh, you're trying to avoid hell and trying to go to heaven. Hell is on earth. Have you ever seen people heavily addicted to drugs? Hell is on earth. And so when Jesus came and conquered this place spiritually, he allowed us to also spiritually conquer this place, first for ourselves and then pushing outward for others. So what all the kingdom citizens are trying to do is explain that there's a 10 commandments, right? There's 10 commandments, And it's literally the guide for how to make your life not be as bad as it could be. If you lie a bunch, your life is really bad. Try to lie as little as possible. Try not to steal too much, even though you might do it when not knowing it, by pirating a video or something, or accepting a pirated video. People do stuff all the time they don't know is bad. Try to do it as little as possible. Life will be easier for you. But it's also the standard of God. The Ten Commandments is the standard of God. He never lies, he never steals, he never covets. So what people don't realize is there's two sides to that sword. There's two sides to that coin. And through the rules that God's giving us, He's saying, I am good and just and level and even. I understand morality, because if you apply this formula anywhere throughout history, you're going to have a better society than not applying this at all. And it does seem like atheists take the solution that comes with the formula of things like the Ten Commandments, but don't accept the formula and wonder why they can't reproduce the same outcome in their own society. There has been such chaos in the last 10 years because people have decided to push aside the truth of God. And because of that, every single year things have gotten progressively worse. We don't want what God has for us. But I get why people don't like the truth. I'm a person too. But at the same time, what it creates is hell on earth. You can't keep doing the same things over and over again expecting a different outcome. And what God is offering is a cycle that reverses what humans do naturally, which is destroy. He also asks, if God saw you doing this moral code and came down and said, do this and you're still going to end up in hell, would you continue to do that moral code? And the answer is, according to King David, his answer in the book of Psalms is, even if I made my bed in hell, God, you would be with me. Meaning, God will never abandon me. That's the faith. And so, even if you're going through really hard times, you're still going to do the right thing. So, you find times in concentration camps where people were on the verge of starvation, and they would give their last everything to somebody else in order to make sure they survived while they struggled. That's pretty much like making your bed in hell and having faith in something else before yourself. And it's a again, right back to self-sacrificing. It's like a cycle that keeps coming back to the same place. The question I have is, what is he following? What is he motivated by? What is his attention and focus on, that he needs morality and God to be so separate, that these are questions in his head when God is like a tooth fairy or a spaghetti monster to people? I guess I don't understand what is driving people who clearly hate God or don't understand him to the point where they feel almost intimidated or angry or something. I don't understand. As an atheist, I could have cared less what people thought about God. I actually was happy there were people who were easily entertained by such concepts. Thought, good for them. They have something that gets them through their day. So he goes on to say that the only reason why Old Testament figures had done all that suffering, like Job suffered, is because he knew he would be rewarded. There's nothing in the Old Testament that implies heaven the way we see it today. There's even Jewish people that do and don't believe in heaven because it's that unclear in the Bible. They're actually divided. So, and even their concepts of heaven is not the same thing as a Christian concept. Uh, Job did get, I think, sevenfold what he lost before, but you can't really replace children with other children. Uh, he did get more children. He did get all of his property back, but he didn't know that. He went into it being mocked and ridiculed by his friends, by his wife, and he basically yelled at God for it. So, and God had to put him in his place, but there again means God's answering him, and that was part of the message of the book of Job, is that God actually heard him, and that in itself was his own reward, and God answered him. That was another reward. And so as Christians, to be able to walk humbly with our God is actually the centerpiece of why heaven is so great. It's not the gold streets, it's the fact that Jesus will be there, and we don't have to be the people with all the answers. We can just go to him. He's the light by which we will see everything, and he will be the absolute perfect judge. So we won't have to worry about who's the good judge, who's the bad judge, who's the good politician, who's the bad politician. We will sweetly feast on a lack of politics. We won't need those things anymore. The old things in the old world will pass away. And that's the part of heaven that I think people forget is, don't you want to be somewhere where there's no suffering, where you know as you're eating that there's not like millions of other people who aren't eating? That's part of the suffering of this world, is knowing that while you have, others don't. And I kind of feel like people miss that, where they have this cartoon concept of heaven, forgetting that it really is getting down to the core of what everybody's fighting for. I mean, right and the left is justice, truth, mercy, kindness, goodness. That's what we're all fighting for, right? So why are we so strange about a place where that exists? Don't you want that? How come Doja Cat can dress like a demon with the reward of being famous and staying famous, but never be questioned as harshly as a Christian who expects a time when there's no more hate, jealousy, and evil? Don't you want your sins forgiven and for you to be able to walk rightly in a place where there's perfect justice and peace? So, this conversation between Parker and Dr. Peterson was a bit interesting because it was more like a litmus test of some kind, where it really wasn't about sincere questions. It felt more like a test of Peterson and his person and character, or his belief or lack thereof. Because, during that Nazi Germany period, there were plenty of people like professors and people who could kind of read the signs who actually left the country early because they could see something was going wrong and they had the ability to leave. So honestly, Peterson in his position now, he left Canada for a bit there. I mean, he's tends to be somebody who sees what's coming and is able to leave early, and he did go against a lot of persecution. It did cost him a lot. And there are also people who went into concentration camps. There are also people who hid. So I guess I don't understand what the questioning is about. He's trying to put him in a corner and prove what? I don't know. So this again, this was about something else. I don't really think there are sincere things happening with what Parker was asking, in my opinion. So again, this video is getting quite long. I will continue with the part 3 only because I feel like some of the other questions were more Christian based oriented questions that I felt like were getting to the core of truly understanding something more than just grandstanding or whatever it is some of these guys were doing. So that will be my next video. May God be with you.